Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Every Calorie Counts podcast. Today we have a special guest, Dom Kuza from Camp Jansen. Dom, you can go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get into it.
My name is Dominic Kuza. I'm a coach on Camp Jansen. Right now, I do a lot of bodybuilding coaching. I do a lot of education. I don't sell quick courses or anything like that, but I do a lot of one-on-one education with a lot of coaches. I've been coaching since 2017. So about, was it 6 years now? Yeah. So about 6 years I've been coaching, and this might have been my full-time job since 2019. So I've been full-time online since 2019. Some might say I knew about COVID, but I didn't really. Um, so I got ahead of the curve there, but I've been coaching for a while, a lot of competitive bodybuilding. I do a lot of lifestyle coaching. I just don't post about it much, but
Mhm.
I'd say about half my business is almost lifestyle coaching at this point. Um,
And how old are
but
you, Dom? Sorry,
I'm 29.
29. Okay.
Yep. I'm in Southeast Michigan, born and raised. Haven't left here, so I haven't probably lived within like a square mile of my entire life.
Wow.
That's fine.
That's cool. I mean, I'm kind of the same,
No, I am the same. I'm born and raised literally in this house.
Well, I've moved multiple states, but for the last like whatever it is, 15 years or so, 20 years or so, I've been in the same spot.
So did you have like a background before coaching at all, or did you know that this was like what you wanted to get into?
Yeah, so I was a pre-dental student in college. I have a bachelor's in biology and then a minor in chemistry, and I was going to go to dental school. I did everything. I took my DAT multiple
Oh,
times,
wow.
applied, interviewed, got waitlisted. I mean, it was to the point where it was to the point where I pretty much had a school that was lined up to accept me, and I decided to pull my application. So um, I made that decision towards like the middle of 2018, where I was just like, I'm not doing this. I don't want to I was working as a dental assistant, and that's kind of what made me realize like this isn't for me.
Hmm.
But I was invested for years into that. And then I decided to do a post batch. And then from there, I went into my master's in exercise science. And at my school, we got to like pick a specialty. And I specialized in physiology during the master's program there. So, no, it really wasn't fitness. It was like pre med, pre dental, like just, doing the whole school thing. And then I just realized a couple different times where I'd be studying for my DAT, which is the dental admissions test, and um, I just couldn't wait to be done studying to go to the gym.
Yeah.
So my just little hints here and there were starting to build up where I just knew that this probably wasn't the right route for me. And yeah, I mean, I freaked a lot of people out. I'm Arab, so our families are really tight,
Oh,
and like that school is the number one
Hmm.
priority thing. So my parents were not exactly that thrilled. Now they don't care, but they at first didn't understand. But thankfully they still supported me and everything. And my now wife, we were dating at the time, and she was like, yeah, I told her I didn't want to go to dental school, and she was like, I've been waiting for you to tell me this. So it was kind of everyone kind of knew, but just didn't say anything.
Hmm.
so I don't know. Take this for what you will, Dom, but you do kind of you're giving me a dentist vibe now. Like I feel like if I
Yeah,
walked
wait,
into the
now I
grocery
kind of
store, you're
like
gonna
see
be my
it.
guy, right? Like who's gonna be my dentist? I'd be like, I'm fully confident with this right now, man. Fully confident with you being my dentist. Um, but yeah, no, it's definitely one of those though where I think that like you being able to get that far in in a certain realm of what I mean. I don't want to call it career, but obviously within your schooling, right,
Hmm.
and even within the career to a certain extent too. Obviously, like you said, you're working there within that field. You know what I mean? But I think having that kind of foundation definitely paves the way for a lot of people and making sure that they have a solid foundation within their coaching practices, within their coaching systems, and kind of just having like that background. I've told her multiple times and my other coach multiple times that it's like it's one of those things where nobody sets your alarm for you. Nobody's going to wake you up. Nobody's going to keep you accountable to these different things. Like it's up to you as far as owning a successful business. And that's essentially what coaching is. As much as we see it as this passion project, it is a business at a certain point if you want to be successful doing, especially with a family.
Yeah, big time. And that's something that I tell a lot of guys too. Like when I start helping them is this is like yes, this is your passion, this is your hobby, but the second you let people see it like that, that's when they stop taking you as seriously. That's when they stop treating it like it's your business. Because
Mhm.
there's lots of times where, like, you had it, we've all had it, where clientele don't take us as seriously because they just assume, oh, this is just their hobby, right? Like, this
Yeah.
isn't a real job. They can't comprehend, an online work and stuff like that. So, um, I always tell people, like, at the end of the day, like, your success is 100% dependent on you, right? Your ability to work, your ability to stay disciplined, your ability to follow a routine, to follow a regiment. That ultimately is only up to you. Nobody can do that for you. My wife can
Mhm.
wake me up every morning, but I have to do the work, right? I have
Yeah.
to do and follow my schedule. But if I don't, I'm not going to see the success that I can see.
Yeah, 100%. And then from there, I think, as we established before we hop on the call, I think I started following you right around that time then when you started to, I guess probably shortly thereafter as you established yourself as a coach. But then from there, it really turned into a thing where you really focused primarily on that coaching because obviously you were a competitive bodybuilder for a period of time there. And then it wasn't, I guess it was probably shortly lived from becoming a relatively shortly lived within a bodybuilding world. Um, from becoming a coach to becoming kind of a full-time coach in the sense of your mentality was completely and totally focused on your competitors and not your own bodybuilding journey anymore. You
Mhm.
want to take us
Yeah,
through that a little bit and kind of what that looked like?
yeah, because I did 3 shows, and I mean I did the whole, like, perfect year off seasons and stuff like that, and I definitely saw a ton of progress. I was decent at best, in my opinion, and that was kind of the decision maker for me. Was, I'm sitting here, I'm analyzing myself, and I'm like, I have, like, B tier genetics, right? Am I really going to be able to take this as far as I think I'm going to be able to take this as far as a competitive standpoint goes? For some guys, it doesn't matter. But, like, when I got married, like, now I have this person that's dependent on me, and now we have a kid, and there's all these things that are, like, making you think of, like, is it really worth it anymore for me, right? Is competing putting money on in my pocket? Is it putting food on my
What's the
table?
value?
It's not, right. So I still train all the time. I still, do everything. I don't do it to the extreme that competing is, right. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a certain point when you have, like, a competitor and then you have a coach at the same time, right. You can't have one foot and one foot.
Mhm.
This isn't going to grow as much, and
Hard.
this isn't going to progress as much, right.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine, actually, I just saw he was finishing up competing for the year, and he has a decent coaching company, and he's like, I have to stop competing if I want this to go far. And I was like, I agree with you. I do. I think it's possible. Yes, of course, but I think it's not for the faint of heart, and you prepare to be pretty lonely if you're going to try to do
Yeah.
both at the same time. Um, that's another thing, like, that I tell guys, like, there's going to be a big part of the whole entire career that is lonely. Especially working remote, and then you're also working on your own competitive progress. Like, you don't have much time for other people,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
that's why I said it's not for the faint of heart to try to be really good at both. So I do think there is a certain point that a coach who competes or a competitor who coaches is going to have to make a pretty steep decision on which way to go with things.
Yeah. I also think from a genetic standpoint, I think to your points on that level, I wax poetic about this all the time because it's something that is near and dear to my heart. Where it's like when you put in the work, and my whole thing with the genetic argument is always a reality where it's like you base your genetics on what you have accomplished, not on what you haven't accomplished. And there's too many people out there, especially nowadays, that are justifying their lack of genetics to be able to do this or do that or not do something. Even more importantly,
Mhm.
whereas I think there's so many people, including myself, in my at least in my opinion at least, where putting in the work for so many years, right, and getting to a certain point. I mean, going from completely and totally show ready and shredded at 148 pounds to eventually stepping on stage at closer to 180 pounds. I did the work to be able to get there as far as stage weight is concerned, and then going from off-season weights of 170 pounds, 180 pounds to going to off-season weights of 230 pounds, again, taking the time, doing what I needed to do, and really kind of walking that path, but leading to a point where I know that I needed to get the result to where I would have been 260 doing the same thing I did versus 230. It's kind of like there's got to be a moment that you sit there with yourself and recognize the reality that you probably didn't want to, because I know for me, I didn't want to come to that conclusion. I didn't want to tell myself that. I always held on to the idea of like, Sean Clarita is 190 pounds. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, dude, it's a totally different 190 pounds. You ever see him in person? He's up to your waist. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a hard reality on both those fronts. Where now I'm 38 years old. I have 3 kids, right? And I've been doing this for 10 years now. I've been a full LLC since 2013. And it's just one of those things where it's like, sooner somewhere along the way, like it's either, I think you have to really establish yourself as either the competitor or the coach. And really, I think anything in life, almost, if you want to be really good at it, you're probably going to have to lock in on that almost exclusively, right? And really put all your time and effort into that you can in order to nurture that and make it successful and cultivate what you're looking to cultivate.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that was the big turning point for me was I'm seeing a lot of success as a coach. Competing is fun. Being successful is a little bit more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So what led Dom then from that point to where now you're all in, right? You're looking at it from the perspective of I am a full-time coach. I am, I'm not a competitor anymore. Like this is my bread and butter. It's where I'm at. And that was, what year was that? Maybe like 2001, 2022 when you really stepped back from even
uh,
competing. 21, right?
it was 2020, 2021 was my last show.
Okay.
And then I had every intention to keep going. But then right after my show, we found out my wife was pregnant, and then I was doing like a whole off season the whole time, like during her entire pregnancy, and then after we had him, that's kind of when I was just like, I don't think this is really worth it anymore at this point. Right? Because like you have kids, so like there's a certain point, right, where you're like, okay, like the woman can take care of herself if something happens to me. This kid can't. Right.
Yeah.
So now I have this kid that I need to look out for. And that kind of was a big decision maker for me as to why to stop. And then I just saw a ton of like linear growth with coaching where it was like, I'm at one point working with 200 something people. Like
Damn.
this, how am I going to be able? Then when I was at that like roster level, that's when I was working out maybe twice a week because I couldn't keep good quality and work while also training all the time. And that was another reason where I had to look at things like I'm just not even in an optimal like arena to train the way I need to train, eat the way I need to eat. And that was another big eye opener for me as to like maybe I just need to go all in on this coaching, like completely all in, like putting competing completely to bed. And that's like 2022 and that happened.
So it kind of all
how
fell
the
into,
hell.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Marin. No, go ahead.
It all like fell into place. Like, so your wife was pregnant and then coaching is taking off. You're not able to be a good bodybuilder because of that. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to go all in. And at that point, were you coaching on your own or were you already with Jansen?
No, so I was with another team. So I was on my own for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And
But
then
before you get into this, not to cut you off here, I apologize. But so did you reach 200 clients on your own, or was that as part of a team? That's A. And then B,
no,
how the fuck did you get to 200 clients, for Christ's sake, dude?
I was completely on my own. Even the team I was part of, it didn't really get me any clientele or anything like that. I've been always self-sufficient, right? But with the 200, I always tell people, you hear the number and you're like, oh my God. But I think it all comes down to your back end. Like if your back end is smooth and you have a schedule for everybody, you could break that up into 4 or 5 days a week of check-ins and you're only doing what, couple 30 something check-ins a day. That doesn't take that long. Right? At least for me, it doesn't, but I also have
me and Tim thinking about our back end trying to do 30 clients.
I mean, ever since a young age, like my dad had us working at 13, right? Like 14. Like I've never been afraid of work. So to me, it was just work. And it's like, if it takes me 12 hours, it takes me 12 hours. If it takes me 10, it takes me 10. That's just how I've always looked at it. And that's why I never cared to work long. And that's probably why I got that high, because I just never had this like capacity where I was like, okay, yeah, I have enough, or I don't have enough. I could fit in a check-in day on Wednesday. I'm not doing check-ins that day. Let's open up Wednesday now. Like, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how I trickled up there. A big part too was probably price. I was pretty cheap at the time, and cheap. I was cheap in a way where clientele started to tell me that I needed to charge more. So
Yeah.
that's that was probably a big part of it too, just price. But no, I mean, I have very detailed backends that keep track of everything and make my
It's
check-in system so smooth. Like, a check-in takes maybe 10 minutes, if that, right? And
it's that wait, what nationality are you?
but so I'm Iraqi.
Yeah, so it's there you go. Between that and being a dentist, you're probably a fucking Excel like monster. You got everything going on there, right? Like you got all your Google sheets and things that would make my head spin. So there
Yeah,
you
so
go.
like I mean that's my thing. It's all Google Sheets, and
Yeah,
every tab has a certain thing, and once you get into your system, and I can pop up a check-in and look at it, and within 5 minutes know what I'm gonna do. And I also
yeah,
think that's a big thing, like knowing your
100%.
clientele and
Yeah.
keeping track of it. Like I kind of already know what I'm gonna do next week for you, right?
Yeah,
So unless there's some big anomaly that we need to talk about, your check-in's gonna be pretty smooth, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think that's one thing that we our entire process here, not to make it about us specifically, is obviously a podcast about you, but for us, I think it really does come down to that back end system, and then I think communication
And I'm
wise,
working
we're
on it. Don't worry
very
about it.
yeah, no, I know. Well, and we've also like I've seen Cam's background as far as his not his background, his back system,
Yeah.
and how he's so in depth with the sheets and everything. And it's one of those things where, and I'm sure you guys have totally different processes. I know Cam's been using his own thing for a long time, and he's a 25-year-old guy that just had this thought process of like, hey, I need to do this, and he just messed around with these fucking Google sheets until he got something that was easy for him to look at every week, and basically put all this together. But now I can ask him about a client that he peaked in 2021, and he can pull up this picture, that picture, match it to the check-in time. And it's like all this shit is so concise and together, and it's fluid and it works with those check-ins to make things so much more efficient. Whereas for us, I think because of my lack, I missed that computer age by like I don't know, like 3 or 4 years, where
No,
it's like we
yeah.
didn't have a computer in my household growing up. You know what I mean? Like I had to go to the library or some shit. I don't even know. Like, I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 20 years old because they didn't exist until, you know what I mean? So it was one of those things where it's like, I feel like I just missed that error to where maybe I could have been a lot better on a computer. And we're working on it. And I think I've evolved it so much so to the point where we're at today, where we have 3 coaches and we do have a team that's getting close to that, 200 clientele mark. But
Tim
it's
is
just
just
one
a
of those
boomer.
things. Yeah, that's it. I'm just a boomer. That's really what it comes down to, honestly. Where I feel like but I think it's a good point though, because I do think that people they limit themselves and they look at some of these numbers and they hear somebody like myself saying that 100 clients to me is a lot because of the amount of effort that we put into it. But is that effort misplaced sometimes? Could it be streamlined with a better system?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also why I've talked so much about systems, because I've watched ours progress, and maybe they're not where they need to be yet, but the progression has allowed us a process where now we can have 3 coaches. Now we can have that many more clients. So I think it is something where, I hope nobody's afraid of that level of work, because there's a big if you're afraid of, sitting behind a computer and doing check-ins for 12 hours, somebody needs to have a conversation with you about what work actually is. And you probably never worked a hard day in your life at that point. You know what I mean? So,
No, for sure.
yeah,
That's that's a 2 week topic I do with mentees is efficiency. So
yeah,
like getting rid of fluff talk, getting rid of a wordiness, getting like making your message extremely precise, concise, direct. You know, listen, you can have friendly conversations all you want. That's fine, but there's a certain threshold that where that needs to stop and what you're wasting time on now.
Hmm.
And then, especially like, I mean, dude, I've seen it. You've seen it too. You get these check-ins that are like this long, and then the coach feels the need to respond the same way. you don't need to respond the same way, right? You need to dissect that message, deliver a concise response, and that's how you can save a lot of time. So efficiency is a big thing that I teach a lot of coaches. And I've helped a lot of coaches like take their 8-hour day into 4. And you know, that now what's that doing? It's opening the realm for so many more clients that you feel comfortable on taking on now.
Yeah. So maybe we'll have to
Yeah, I'm just gonna say,
put
sign me
in a
up.
phone call this time. You'd throw up if you saw the 20-minute Lou videos I do in some cases. So now getting on from that topic, how does Dom now position himself to be part of Camp Jansen? Which again, from a
Wait,
coach's
before
perspective,
that, the
go ahead.
200 clients, if you got them on your own, like, is there, you said you're in Michigan, is there just
Yeah.
like a big, or like no
That's a good
coaches in
point.
Are they like local, all of that initial 200 clients that you had?
Yeah, that initial, a lot were local.
Okay.
I would like to say that I'm probably a pretty known person here, especially in the competitive scene. And not even just there, but a lot of the gyms kind of just know who I am.
Yeah.
To the point where I don't even work out at like the busy gyms anymore because I couldn't.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of it was that word of mouth. And then once I started getting some competitors out of state, that's when I started to see even lifestyle clients come from those same states. So that was another transition. But out of that like initial big number I had, a lot of them were local Michigan people.
Cool.
Mm.
Cool.
There's coaches here, but there's not many that you're like wowed by.
I can't think of anybody out of Michigan, honestly. I can't think of anybody.
From a competitive coach standpoint, there's Justin Harris and there's Shelby Starnes. They both live
Oh,
here.
Shelby's from Michigan.
That's true. I forgot about Shelby. Yeah. And then
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
also there's somebody else. I can't think of off the top of my head. He has the big podcast. Or at least he was in Michigan for a while, and now I can't think of his name, and I don't want to sit here and waste our time. But yeah, so that's actually a good one because for us, we are very much local. And as much as we've spanned out a little bit, we're still kind of in that local scene and developing our business through that local scene. But the reality is we also live in a very populated and rather affluent area for that matter, too, in central New Jersey. But all that being said, I think again, where I was going was the Camp Jansen thing, and how'd you position well, not even how'd you, because I guess we've already kind of answered that, how you positioned yourself. You're a freaking coach with 200 plus clients. You're, obviously kind of like almost at the top of the food chain in your state, so to speak, and doing all this good work in terms of the quality physiques that you've been putting out for years and years and years. But what was how did you go to Matt? Did Matt come to you? How did that whole thing happen as a coach? That's been in the bodybuilding scene for so long. It's kind of like, when you get a chance, it's like joining the Yankees. We were talking about the Yankees before the podcast for a second. Seriously, it's like being a pitcher in for a minor league system and being really good. And then the Yankees call you and they're like, hey, dude, would you like to come play for the Yankees? I don't care who you are, how many clients you have. You're going to be like, oh shit, dude, I get a chance to wear the pinstripes.
Yeah. So, like I said, I was with a team beforehand. That team was very trying to cater to every aspect of fitness possible, right? CrossFit, this, that, and it was very discombobulated into direction, as far as like helping me get clients, right? So I decided to leave them in December of 2022, and during that year at North Americans was a really good showing for me. I had a super heavyweight take third, and he came third to Matt's guy who took second. And I think it was Joey. His name is Joey. I think it was Joey's prep was one thing I think Matt caught eye of a lot because he was rightfully so, he was competitive against his, one of his top guys that was competing that year too. And actually, to rewind a little bit, what I got enlightened with later was Matt was looking for more coaches, and Jacoby actually had name dropped me, and that I think was kind of how his eyes kind of came towards me a little bit. And a big part too, I think, was Matt was looking for something to fill a gap as far as like education goes, all the health stuff, the functional stuff, all those things, while also winning, right? Because that's,
Yeah.
that's something that Matt was really big on. So it was, Joey did really well in North Americans. I ended up leading that team. I won the national overall men's physique with one of my clients at nationals. And that was our first kind of conversation between Matt and I. He sent me a message saying, like, congratulating me. And, so then it was at a point where I was, talking to both Jacoby and Cam, because they were both part of Camp Jansen. And they were like, just reach out. So I ended up sending an email that, turned into a couple phone calls here and there. And, joined officially like in March, I think it was. Yeah, March of this year I joined. And now, with that, I mean, we're a really fluid team. And I think it's great because I did fill a lot of gaps as far as like, helping, with hard client blood work cases and, explaining why we do stuff. Cause that's a big thing. I don't just tell people what to do. I tell them why we're doing it after I tell them what we're doing. And that's been something that's been huge. And there's all the education piece, teaching more about diuretics, doing like just teaching a bunch. The education thing was a big 2023 thing for me this year. And now at camp, now at I'm also now working with Revive. As far as like an educator role at Revive goes, I help formulate products now, things like that. That new cortisol support, I'm the one who formulated it.
Nice.
So there's a lot of things now that have transitioned from Camp Jansen to now I'm getting into the whole raw Revive world with them. So a lot of great things and honestly, it was one of the best decisions I ever made for my career.
I believe it. It's exciting because you see some of the guys that have also been able to kind of get the opportunity to kind of go that route. And some of them, like I one of my early coaches was Alan Kress. And
Yeah.
he's a big part of that down there too, as far as Revive is concerned, or at least was. And he's been able to spend time with Matt and Dominic. And it's just one of those things where, like, to see the rate of growth that he had in a relatively short period of time. It's honestly, it's almost like staggering what those, especially with those two guys down there, have done. Matt, and it's fucking impressive, man. It's awesome. It's impressive. And they've not just, done something that has allowed them and their family a certain bit of security in an industry where, 10 years ago, somebody told you it's not even worth it to look down that path as far as security for you and your family. But they're starting to develop, a very real legacy that they're leaving behind. And now they're getting with guys like you. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, dude, I think they're just scratching the surface, to be completely honest. I mean, we're in the pipeline of so many new products and things that I, took a look at and was like, we could use this, maybe change this, and enlightening in a way that a lot of times goes overlooked, right? You're so busy with so much stuff at this great capacity you're working at now, and then you overlook certain things. And sometimes a fresh set of eyes is a good way to help that. And I think that's kind of where my role now is hopefully going to be with them.
Yeah, it's awesome. So now going into, I think one of the topics that I think I really wanted to discuss with you is, the kind of getting, I don't know how I would even phrase this or articulate it, getting a client from the place where, maybe you have some good clients on your roster, you have some, a decent bit of overalls, right, where we're at on an amateur level. And now you want to really get the clients to understand, right? Or maybe you are the athlete, to understand like what is necessary to take that next step. So for me as a coach, it's being able to be recognized, right? Like you just told this great thing where you're at now is awesome, but it essentially stemmed from winning or putting up
Yeah.
people on a stage where you could be recognized as a coach. And kind of having that, just, the proof is in the pudding is the way that we always put it. You know what I mean? And without that proof on a consistent, regular basis, time and time again, I guarantee you don't have the job in the placings that you do right now. Yeah, as far as your career is concerned. So, I think this is a big part of a coach's development, but it's also, again, we're speaking to athletes here, whether we are the coaches talking to athletes or an athlete just taking this away. I think the biggest thing that's missing right now in our kind of, that world of I'm a good amateurs. Hey, what is a good amateur? Because local level shows have kind of been diluted at this point, and they're so there's so much opportunity to be a nationally qualified competitor that like maybe that needs to be defined, and we'll leave that for a secondary podcast maybe. But like once you are somebody that has that ability to say, okay, I have an overall or two, multiple overalls maybe under my belt. Marina has 3 overalls under her belt. Like what's the difference between that person that's learned how to accomplish that on a local level, where it can walk into most of those local shows and say, I got a top 3 placing, no doubt, to being able to step on that national level stage and really have that confidence and knowing they're going to be a top. We actually spoke, I don't know if you remember, but we spoke at North Americans after the show. Yeah, and we had a really quick conversation there where I had a competitor, take 4th in her class. And it's one of those ones where I think you basically said something along the lines of, once you crack that top 5, you got something special, like keep going with it, But again, what would be the number one thing that you'd recommend to somebody in terms of looking at to get from point A to point B within that realm?
I think so my belief has always been if you can't walk onto a local stage and win the overall, you have no business going to nationals.
I agree. I don't care what anyone says. I agree.
Because from a judging standpoint, so that's another thing actually that I'm going to be starting getting into is I'll hopefully start judging here in Michigan.
Nice.
From a judging standpoint, the overall winner is supposed to be the person that the judges believe has the best physique and criteria met for the national stage, right? So when they look at the overall comparison, the winner is supposed to represent the person out of that group that has the highest likelihood of doing well at nationals. That's kind of the thought process. Yeah. So who up there is going, and if you're not that person, why do you think you're going to do well at nationals? You're not, right? Like, I had a wellness girl do a local Michigan show to qualify. I told her, you're going to win the overall. Don't worry about it. Right. She walked on stage, won the overall, turned pro at nationals this year. So I really do believe that is a good amateur. A good amateur is somebody who can walk on, who's not fully ready, win an overall, and then go to nationals and be in that top 3, top 5. I think top 3 is always where I try to shoot at nationals now, because when you're in the top 3, you can do multiple national shows a year and probably stay in that top 3, or just continue to improve. A mentee of mine, Megan Long, she had a bikini client take 4th at junior nationals, win her pro card at nationals, right? You're in that top 4, top 3 kind of realm. You can keep cracking at it. Like, I think I told you, like, you're at the door, like you're knocking at the door, just keep going with it. But
that was Megan's first pro card, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I was so happy for them.
Yeah, it was sweet. It was really cool to see. But to take that amateur and to tell them this, and they need to be able to do this, like I talked about with the coaching success, it's all on them. They could have the best coach in the world. It doesn't matter if they don't execute, right? Mm-hmm. Like I have clientele that are great, robotic, right? And rightfully so, they progress the most, right? And then I have clientele who complain about their progress, but then I pull up their sheet and I see these check-in adherences in the 5s out of 10 and the 6 out of 10 for weeks on end. How do you expect to see any progress, right? Mm-hmm. Drugs aren't going to do the work for you, even though a lot of people think it does. So I think a lot of it comes down to, I have hard conversations with people all the time where I say, you have the tools, you just need to be perfect for a year, right? It's okay. You can eat 34 out of 35 meals a week and have your one free meal a week, right? When you buckle down and do that, you will be shocked at how much you'll change. Like, so many of these people are a 10th place at nationals right now. They are one good year away from being 2nd or 1st. And it's hard to comprehend, because they think, well, if I take a full year off, then more people are going to show up and the competition is just getting better and better. Well, take that year is your chance to be into that, right? Like, that's just where my kind of mindset has been with this whole thing. And like my wellness girl is a good example of, she took 3rd at Universe in 2021, one spot away from a pro card. All right, you would think, let's go do more shows this year. We're right there. She said, no, I want to do wellness. I want to buckle down and do wellness. I said, you're not going to compete for 2 to 3 years. And she was like, I'm fine with that. She buckled down for 2 years, grew an astronomical amount, and turned pro her first year doing wellness, right?
Wow.
So, but what I'm trying to say is it speaks on the testament of getting these perfect years in
Mhm.
or year in, how much that's really going to change you.
Yeah.
My other wellness girl took fifth at USA's last year, one perfect off season, perfect. I mean, she tripled in size and she took third at nationals. Arguably, she was in the box the whole entire prejudge and got moved the last round of comparisons. Like, she was pretty much a pro card. Oh, she was a placing away from a pro card. So just again to talk about just the importance of like that perfect year. And I personally think if you're not willing to do the perfect year, then you shouldn't be competing,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're just going to slow roll
What's it
everything.
for? Yeah. What's it for? Yeah. Ultimately.
Yeah. What's it for? Do you listen? I have no problem if you want to do every local show and just collect
Yeah.
trophies and you're what is that, like after hours basketball freaking,
Yeah.
that's what
Exactly.
you're trying to chase. That's fine. Right. If you want to be the locker room hero, go ahead. But if you're really trying to chase championships, you're really trying to turn pro, you're really trying to take this far, there should be no conversation of off season balance, this, that. You should be committed fully into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we've all seen that guy at the local shows. And again, no disrespect to him whatsoever. Maybe he's like 65, 70. And, you see him backstage. He's like, this is my 12th show this year. And I've competed 39 times or whatever it is. And it's like, that's cool, man. That's awesome. And again, I don't want to take anything away from that person that actually enjoys it. But he's also the guy that's kind of just like languished around. He's never probably had the aspirations, or maybe he did early on, of getting to nationals and taking that pro card, or getting to North Americans and taking, or whatever it is. Right. So it's one of those things where it's like, there's a big difference between competing as a hobbyist, right, and competing to actually get that end result
Yeah.
and really, walk away with that trophy.
Mhm.
Yeah. And like, now I'm having conversations with people, like, unfortunately, they're unfortunate conversations, but I'm having conversations where I have to tell people, you just don't have it. Like,
I think
you
that's I
just,
think that's something that's changed here recently over the course of the last couple of years. Even a few of the good coaches that I'll communicate with, there is actually those conversations taking place at a certain point. And it's a good thing, because I think that, you end up at 36, 37, 38 years old, you see guys that are still pushing, or women in their early 30s that are still pushing it. And it's almost like, where are we going with this? Like, you are competing
yeah.
here. It's like, yeah, I know you took sixth place once on a national level stage. It's great, but like, it doesn't really mean much at this point anymore, does
Yeah.
it? I mean, where, sixth place can turn into 12th place in one season, just like that, especially when you're competing back to back to back to back seasons. And that's not even including all the health concerns and health risks that are involved in that too. So
Yeah, the drug use is the big thing for me when it comes to the guys and girls that I just am like, you just don't have it. Like, what's the point of doing all this risk if you're not, willing, if you're not responding the way you should be, right? Or the way we imagine you should be, right? And it's not moving that way. Why risk it? Why risk it all, for something like that? But some people are okay with it and they want to keep progressing,
yeah,
which I think as long as you can accept the reality, you're fine. Go ahead. We can do as many
100%.
local shows as you want. But if you're delusional thinking you're going to turn pro, but you have this 70% off season and you barely changed, that's where we probably need to have a conversation of, what's going on here.
Yeah. And I think that's where this conversation leads to me, is the idea that the perfect off season, quote unquote, and like being able to quantify that or define that to some extent. Because what I see during an off season, especially when somebody is maybe, a little bit of younger, and maybe they don't have a full comprehension yet of where they should be, and they're honestly wasting time and wasting some off seasons. You listen, Marina?
Oh yeah.
Where it's
No,
it's
I'm
it's
literally
one
like,
of
this
those
is
things.
me.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think you really have to understand sometimes that, like you mentioned, 34 out of 35 meals. And like, one free meal a week is one free meal a week. But it's even like, getting really nitty-gritty. It's almost like, all right, well, like, and I know I've seen plenty of people use that one free meal and completely and totally abuse the shit out of that concept, right? But I think more so than that, we got to zoom out and look at this, 12-month span, let's say, all at once here, and recognize that it's not 34 out of 35 meals in these cases, right? In the cases that people aren't making the progress that they're supposed to, it's a 7-day vacation here, then it took them 3 days to get back on their plan, then it's that one free meal the next week, then the next week after that, they're off for an entire weekend because they have a wedding. And then the week after that, it's Christmas and they're off for, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then it's like you zoom out. And granted, again, I don't want to take anything away. You should be able to enjoy a Christmas Eve dinner, a Christmas Day dinner. You should be able to enjoy a vacation to a certain extent. You should be able to enjoy some of these things, but it really does come back to your overall, not just responsibility level as somebody that is telling themselves that they want to be a pro and they are, using the drugs to be able to become pro. And again, maybe they have a family and all this stuff behind it. There is a responsibility level there for you for all intents and purposes. But also it's one of those things where you have to understand that it's like, again, these things are it's accumulative, right, over a period of time. Like these things accumulate, and it's not I think we're so hyper focused on this one vacation we're going on. It's like, well, I did so well for a few, I deserve this one vacation. Yeah, sure. I did so well, I deserve Christmas and this. I did so well, I deserve this weekend off here and that weekend off here. But again, you zoom out and you take all those things into consideration, right? You didn't just have 34 out of 35 meals every week, dude. Like you legitimately, that's from an accumulative sense, that's 2 months out of 12. You didn't have a 12-month off season. You had a 10-month off season. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, no,
And
I
and that
agree.
2 months too, I think I do think, sorry, but I think that 2 months, it's like people don't recognize, especially when it comes to bodybuilding, we're putting so much emphasis, so much pressure on our body to do something that it doesn't want to do. 2 months out of 10, that's a lot of fucking time when it comes down to it. It's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time, and I think on top of that, if you have plans to compete the next year, it's probably even shorter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then there's gaps in between that you need to take a health phase or do things like that.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough time in off seasons, right? They think they can do all this progress in 10 months when in reality they probably need like 18 or 19 or 20 even. Because people don't take that stuff into consideration, right? They think off season 10 months, but really that's okay. We'll do a 4 month cycle here. We're going to take 2 months off here. Okay, that just ate up 6 months out of that 10,
Yep.
right? And now I'm going to do that again. So really, I only had like maybe 7 months of actual growth
growth,
pushing,
yeah.
Yep.
right? And I think that's another thing that a lot of people do wrong. And a lot of people, I'm big on now, like, um, not letting my athletes pick their shows. Like, I will pick your show. Like, I have,
100%.
I have a handful of men's physique pros now, and we're kind of trying to, the schedule just came out this week, and we're trying to navigate and look at, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to look at things? And, I tell them, what do you have your eye on? Right? Tell me what you have your eye on, but I need to see your pictures, and I'll tell you if this is even realistic or
Realistic. Yeah. 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 I think picking the show is a big thing, but I also think it's, one thing, and I don't want to not give you credit here. And we've already talked about him a couple of times here in terms of Cameron. But the one thing that I've learned from Cam is like and again, you look at him this year is a perfect example of this. Name somebody that he put on stage this year at the national level that doesn't have the story of this person came to me in 2020 or
Yeah.
2021 and they haven't competed at all. Was it Trevor that just won? Trevor
Trevor
Birch
was
or
like
something like
3 years off, or 4 or 5 years or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like it was.
Crazy.
I think his was 21. Then there was Elias at North Americans who we're close with here. He's a Jersey guy. He was a 4-year off season with Cam, and it's one of those things. And again, I don't want to not give you credit here. I haven't recognized. I've been working with Cam, as you can tell through some phone calls and going over some stuff and whatnot. But it's one of those things where it's like. It's so evident from that side. And the way that he put it is basically like, dude, I have a certain level of integrity for myself as a coach. Like the product that I'm putting on stage has to meet that standard. You know what I mean? And it basically comes down to that, where it's like, I'm gonna get you to the point that you want to get to, right? As the client or as the competitor. But like, here's the steps that you have to travel, regardless of how far, long, or what you want to do. You came to me to get you to this point. This is where you're at. Close the effing gap. You know what I mean? And if it takes 4 years, it takes 4 years.
Yeah.
And
No,
I got
for
a ton
sure.
of respect for that. A ton of respect for that concept.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's something that we all kind of really believe in. I mean, we have a saying within our team, it's just quality shit takes time. So,
Yeah.
And that's something that we all try to do and we all try to push for. And, like I said, I've had plenty of conversations. We all have conversations all the time where it's unfortunate. People get excited. They want to compete. Well, hey, sorry, you're probably looking at 2026, 2025, right? You need more time.
Do you feel like you've seen any attrition in your clientele books because of that mindset relative to where you were? And I know you might not carry 200 clients anymore because of everything else you got your hands in, but at the same time, have you seen attrition, you think, because of that thought process?
No, I haven't personally, but I'm sure some coaches do. I haven't. I think a lot of it comes down to the trust factor the athlete has in the coach. Dom's telling me I need 2 years. Well, look what he does with people who do take those 2 years, right? So
Yeah,
maybe I need to just buckle down and listen to him and not rush it. Um,
right.
because that's a big thing too. Like the guy who won the national overall with me last year, in men's physique, we worked together for 2.5 years before we prepped for a show. And we prepped for a show. He did his qualifier. He won, like I said, he won his overall at the qualifier. And then he went on to, he went on to win the national overall, a few weeks later. So, like seeing those, and I think as a coach, it's always very good to emphasize that when you post it. This person took X amount of years, because you're showing your other athletes and people who might be interested in working with you the reality of, AJ didn't come to me 16 weeks out and won the nationals, right? He came to me in 2020 and we won
Mm,
nationals 2022, right? So we worked together for 2 years before we prepped, right? So
mm.
I think that's important to also talk about when you like make those posts and you have those wins. Like Madison, when she turned pro in wellness this year, I specifically talked about the universe story and 2.5 years of no competitions. And, it got us from her first season as a wellness competitor and overall and a pro card, right?
Mm.
So,
It's interesting. Off the top of my head, I don't remember thinking about posting a competitor in that sense. But yet I can tell you definitively, if you look at any post of a general population client that I have up there for the last, I don't know, 2 years or so, all of it is an emphasis on like this happened over the course of a year. This happened
Mhm.
over the course of 2 years. And like even putting, certain comments in there sometimes where it's like, if anybody's telling you it's going to happen sooner than that, you're doing it the wrong way in the sense that it's going to be hardly sustainable. So it off the top of my head, it's actually like kind of like interesting or weird that I haven't put those two things together yet. Being that it's like obviously there's more there to do from a competitive standpoint than there is to do on a general population. I mean, that's just
yeah.
reality. So
Yeah, listen, like the cool 12-week preps look awesome, right?
yeah,
And they
yeah.
look
The
cool,
rush, the rush prep.
but if you're going to attract clientele that way, you're not going to get long-term committed clientele,
Mhm.
right? Because
Yeah,
they think you're going to be able to do this for them in 4 months, right? Where in reality, they probably need a year or two. So
yeah. It's
that's
you know what
something that,
it's an interesting thing from a coach's standpoint because we sit here and we talk about competitors all the time and like putting in the effort. I mean that's exactly what the question was, as far as like putting in the effort as a competitor for that year. But it's almost like as a coach you have to step back at a certain point and recognize like, hey, is this the 2 year stretch that you're going to take with all these clients, keeping them from competing and making them do that work over and over and over again, instead of just going with the pressure of like, hey, I want, all these people to compete. And then obviously every, competitive picture we could post, it's an opportunity to garner new business. Being at the shows is an opportunity to garner new business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But is it valuable from a coach's standpoint? Is it that much more valuable from a coach's standpoint to have everybody take that off season, you know what I mean? That's necessary, that 2 year off season, and then be able to have that one season where it's like, look at this, roster that I have this year and how much work and effort they put in and
yeah.
being able to market that. Yeah, it's a huge
So
investment.
yeah, it's a huge investment. I It's hard to say if the ROI is worth it though, because I
Yeah.
think there's gaps where unless you have a very big name, there's gaps of where you could probably get forgotten about or just put on the back burner a little bit. Um, so it makes it hard. It makes that decision making hard. If how many, like, I get it. We want to have like a crazy year. We want to have all quality. I think it's more about consistency than the big wins all the time, right? Like my whole thing with me is I do make sure that all these people are on stage properly, but I want my consistency with my looks, my peaks, my placings to stay really relative. Like I didn't have a person at a pro qualifier this year take less than top 8, right? So, majority in the top 4. So from my consistency standpoint, I'm very pleased with this year. Did I have an overall win? No, I didn't. Did I have I had a few pro cards. So, these are all good things, but I know some coaches that buckle down hard and like maybe put a couple people on stage a year, but then I start to hear through the grapevine, they're not picking up new clientele. Well, we're not showing as much clientele, so I think there is a fine line to it too. Because unless you're, really well known and you're just well known for that, it's hard to buckle down on a like, uh, competitive process for your athletes as a coach too. Because if you're not putting people out there, why are people going to pay attention to you as much?
I think that's you could look at that though, where first and foremost, realistically, right? Like we all have our different, our roster and different clientele, and everybody's kind of, within their own process. So I would just think that it would be rare to find that one coach where it's like, okay, nobody this year is competing for the next 2. You know what I mean? Like realistically, this person hasn't competed for 2 years and they're ready to step on stage this year. This person needs a
No,
2-year
for
off
sure.
season or a year off, right? But then on top of that, it's also I think, you make a good point, though, with the consistency aspect. Like, that's one thing. I actually had a conversation with a coach, Nick Bono, who actually just won his card in nationals this year. And I actually asked him a couple questions about a competitor I had. It was the one competitor this year that I had where I knew something went wrong during the peak. You're familiar with Austin Stout. I've worked with Austin for years in a mentorship role. I called him up literally the morning of the show, and it was just this big thing for me. Because I couldn't figure out what the F was going wrong. I played every single card that I had, and even Austin was like, dude, maybe he's sick. Like maybe there's an infection somewhere or something. But I had Nick pull me to the side, and basically he was like, dude, look at what you do. Like, this is what you do. You know what I mean? Like, this is where your competitors are. This is where they place on a regular, consistent basis. You know what you do. If he's falling outside of that, maybe there's something else going on there that you're not 100%, aware of. And you need to give that some consideration versus all the things that you did do. You know what I mean? There's a big factor, I think, there as far as the consistency concept, where it's like, it is something that you start to, it's maybe, I don't want to say your calling card, but yeah, maybe your calling card, maybe like, it's a representation of you as a coach in terms of that consistency factor. But I think a lot of that also is going to come back to the reality that, like, for most coaches, right? Because obviously you're a name now. There's so many names out there where a lot of that high end talent is going to those names. You can create your own person, right? In so many ways, if that makes sense. But a lot of the high end talent is going to go to those names. Me as a coach, right? Marina as a coach, like, we're going to have to mold those people from square one. And that's going to take some experience level. So we're going to have enough of those clientele that are coming in where it's their first season, maybe their second season, and they need to get some things under their belt. But we also, that allows us an ability to hone our craft and hone our reputation and start to build that kind of respect level of, this is what we're bringing to stage over and over and over again. And now maybe after that person's first or second season, that's where the conversation comes in, where it's like, okay, now we know what you're capable of. You got your feet wet. You have some experience on stage, but now it's time to, comprehend, this is where you're at. This is where the standard is set. We got a, 12-month, 16-month, 24-month process here that we have to kind of set forth.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it speaks volume about the coach when they can take a winter beater and make it look like a Ferrari, right? Now,
yeah,
and I think that's where like the high end talent conversation starts to get a little bit muddled, because a lot of people can polish a Ferrari, right? But a lot of people can't take a winter beater and make it look like a Ferrari, right? So I think that's where that's how you can tell a good coach from a guy who's just kind of getting lucky, in my opinion, with some of the clientele that comes to them. I think it speaks volume about the coach when they can take those people, mold them into something that's impressive and special. And, they have this, Cinderella story, right? Where they were nothing and they were a lifestyle client who wanted to compete, and now they're a pro, right? Like, I think that speaks volume about the coach versus high-end clientele just kind of, coming and then all of a sudden we're just spit shining something and putting them right up on stage.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I mean, that is a big thing. That is a thing that genuinely and honestly exists, and that's kind of I've seen it before where that's where the coach made their name, and now they're
Mm.
able to get so much more in front of them in terms of that volume, and then they
Yeah.
can continually do that over and over and over again. But I'm definitely stealing that, by the way. Spit shining a Ferrari. I'm definitely stealing that shit. You're gonna see that in my stories, and I'm not tagging you and giving you any credit whatsoever.
Yeah, I
But
mean it's true, man. But I think it's just always more rewarding though when you have like the project that you've been working on for a long time with somebody, versus, listen, it's awesome taking somebody who's right there and you're just gonna finish the job for them and it feels really good. But it feels even better when it's something that you guys been
100%.
working on for years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one thing. Like I know Marina came to me for coaching when she was 18 years old, right? But specifically for bikini. But now being where we're at now and the amount of years that we have invested into this
Mhm.
process, right? It's still it's going to be amazing when we do get the card, right? But it's also one of those things where it's like you said, the person that comes in from a lifestyle perspective, like that was the girl at North Americans this year that was basically she's a Broadway performer and was
Oh,
just kind of like,
totally.
hey, I want to get in shape for Broadway, right? And now she's looking, at an opportunity to become a professional bikini competitor, or even the young guy like Dan we had that came through. He's a hockey player, and like now he just put on 50 pounds in an off season since August and looks fucking incredible. He's the last post that I made. But looks fucking awesome. Like he legitimately has a future, like a real future, and it's cool, it's fun. But that's also like that's the reason why you're a coach right there. Like those
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
individual cases are the reason why you're a coach for sure.
Yeah, like one thing that I tell a lot of the coaches I work with, and just like a lot of people around me, I've always believed in impact being more than the hype. I want to
Yeah.
be more so known for the impact I make than the hype of just, the wins and things like
Hmm.
that. So that to me is a lot like the impact of, Megan's client turning pro, like seeing that honestly was something that made me more happy and more excited than my own athlete turning pro. Because like I know what I'm capable of. We were great. We looked great. We knew we were going to kill it, but you know now seeing like what that elevated Megan to, that meant a ton to me. Um,
Absolutely.
so I think the impact is a big thing that I always try to focus on.
Right. So that means Marina, you need to make somebody win a pro card so I can see what that feels like too. Dog. Well,
So
listen,
yeah, I
Tom.
will.
Listen,
It's tomorrow. It's happening tomorrow. I don't know if I told
yeah,
you.
sure, right in the middle of no shows. But
Yeah, during
listen, Dom,
Christmas.
we've taken an hour of your time, man. We really appreciate
Yeah.
you coming on with us. It was definitely cool to be able to kind of get to know a little bit more and have this kind of a conversation. Hopefully, we can have you on again and go into a little bit more of a conversation as far as competing as a whole is concerned.
Hmm.
But dude, we really do appreciate the time, man. It was awesome.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. I love podcasts. So if you whenever you want to do another one, I'm definitely open to doing it. I could talk for hours. I had my own, and our episodes were like 3.5, almost four
Oh my
hours. So
God.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's awesome. That's what I like. They yell at everybody yells at me and they're like, nobody listens to podcasts for that long. And I'm like, dude, it's a conversation. Like it just
Yeah.
if it naturally goes, it
Yeah.
naturally goes. But what would be cool, and maybe I'll reach out to Cam too and see if we do it. But maybe get the Camp Jansen guys on. I don't know how Matt would feel about that. We'll make sure we promote it well enough. But that would be cool to maybe kind of get the team on because you guys killed it this year, man. Like
Hmm.
it's one of those things where
Yeah.
it's not like this isn't his first soiree into having the coaches. Obviously, we know there was the guys there before. For all intents and purposes, Matt was awesome in terms of Berzicott, and Jalen was there originally, right? But it's one of those things where, like, now seeing how he kind of fine tuned that and streamlined it. And again, no offense to anybody else, but it's just like you guys killed it this year, and I don't know, it's cool. It's cool to see a team like that. Especially coming from somebody where they're just, a year, maybe 2 years ago, if you told me to have a team, I would have said, no way, dude. I don't want any part of a team myself. Like, I'm not at that point where I need a team or anything along those lines. Like, I'm happy being a coach and I could do that for the rest of my life. And now I have two coaches underneath me and we're starting to build that team. But it's one of those things where you also see these teams come and go so fast, so easily. I know Matt is different already because of his reputation and who he is, but to see somebody at that level develop a team like you guys and see you guys kill it, and obviously, honestly, for Jacoby, you get better and better and better every year. It's fucking
Yeah.
cool, man. It really is. It's cool.
Yeah, I know it's
So,
awesome. It's a great environment. I'm blessed to be here. And next year will probably be even better. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Good luck to you guys there. So, all right. Well, listen, again, we appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely reach out in the future.
And
thank you guys.
Dom, let the people know where they can find you.
Just Instagram _ Dom Kuza.
There you
Very
go.
simple, nothing flashy.
Nice. Alrighty. Thank you
1%
again.
left. 1% left in my headphone batteries, by the way. 1% left. We just made it.
Oh my God. Always an issue. Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you next week.